Hello, everybody. I'm so glad that you're able to join us this evening to Mustard Seed Generation's Heart to Healing Fireside Chat series. And today we have a very, very special event. It's called From the Counseling Couch. So you might have joined our last Fireside Chat where we talked about what is therapy from the perspective of mental health professionals. Well, today we're going to talk about what therapy is like from the perspective of those who have received therapy before. So today, um, what we're going to do is just kind of talk about like what was it like, going through therapy as someone getting it. It's a very casual kind of conversation that's going back and forth. And then, of course, at the end of the hour, you'll have an opportunity to chat and ask questions that come up throughout as well. So let me introduce everybody. My name is Dr. Samuel Kim. I'm an associate professor at Texas Women's University. I'm also a licensed psychologist and a licensed specialist in school psychology. I received my doctoral degree in Georgia State University, and I do research around Korean American well-being and belongingness. I am a second generation Korean American born and raised in Columbus, Georgia. Oh, our first panelist tonight is Mr. Jonathan O. He's a Korean American actuarial analyst, currently serving in All Nations Fellowship Church in Dallas, Texas, and has a strong desire to witness others flourish in their mental health. Having personally navigated therapy and mental health services for over 8 years, Jonathan understands the immense benefits that mental health services can bring to every person. Through openly sharing his experiences, he hopes to help break down barriers and stigma so individuals and communities can be happier. I would also like to introduce Ms. Angie Cho. Angie is a second generation Korean American from Portland, Oregon, is a registered associate therapist in the Portland metropolitan area. She's married to an English ministry pastor in Oregon, and together they've served their Korean American multi-generational church for more than a decade, y'all. That's a long time. They have two daughters, Harper and Haven. Angie's committed to listening to and amplifying the voices of Korean Americans, shedding light on the complexities of multicultural life. And our last panelist is Ms. Grace Lim Premberry. Did I get that right?
Very close from Bari.
Prambari. Grace Lim Prambari is a small business owner with over a decade of experience in high-end fashion. However, her primary occupation is a caregiver to both of her ailing parents and two strong-willed daughters. Are we going to hear about them tonight? Maybe. Once highly skeptical of therapy, she is now an advocate and evangelist for behavioral health and therapy. So please welcome our panelists. You can either clap on your screen or like put up some hearts and emoticons in the chat. All right. Well, let's get started. So why are we wanting to do this event? Well, we wanted to do this event because we want to talk about, well, what's it like to get therapy? And the best place to start often is the beginning, right? So let's start off at the beginning. What were you going through that led you to go get therapy? Um, Angie, would you like to start us off? What was it that was going through your life that you decided, I need to go get therapy?
Yeah, I can definitely go ahead. Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a privilege. Um, yeah, so the first time I went to therapy, I was actually in my late teens. It was in college. I had actually been dismissed from school due to terrible grades. I was struggling with mental health, which really impacted just my identity, how I viewed myself. That was actually the time when I was diagnosed with general anxiety. And in a way, it was such a relief to know because it explained a lot of things for me. And it also helped me to figure out what the next steps were. And I would say that when I initially started therapy, well, before that, I did speak with, some friends too. I had close friends that I would speak with, but ultimately, I think I really realized I need to speak to someone that was a professional that didn't know me, because I noticed that when I was speaking with my friends, I would feel like I was burdening them, even though they said that they were not feeling burdened. That's how I felt. So it made it more difficult. And there were some things that were very shameful for me to share, but sharing it with a stranger was a lot easier because they didn't know me. It was very objective in a lot of ways. And so, that's how I got started the first time. And then my most recent therapy session was actually in family therapy, in individual therapy. And I initially felt that we needed therapy to help my daughter in addressing emotional sensitivity. But ultimately, it was clear at the first session that it was more about the work that my husband and I had to do on ourselves to be better parents for our children. So that's another story. But we finished family therapy last year, and now I'm currently in individual therapy to work more on my own self-awareness and just kind of processing through some of my experiences.
Oh, wow. There's so much going on. It's not just you, but it's also your family as well. You
Mhm.
said something interesting that I want to just kind of touch on for a few minutes. You said it's often easier to talk to strangers than people who know you. And that might be a little counterintuitive to some people in our audience. It's like, well, isn't it easier to talk to a family member or friend who knows us? Why should I go to a complete stranger?
I think, as I kind of mentioned too, I think a professional is able to hold that space for you in a different way that a family and a friend is able to. And I feel like because I noticed that with family and friends, they were getting so caught up with just the emotions too of what I was experiencing. And sometimes it wasn't always the most helpful. But when I would speak with a therapist, it was just different in the sense that they were able to, first of all, hold that space for me. And they were able to even point things out that I didn't notice I was missing. Things that, even family and friends were missing because they're so caught up and wrapped up in how I was going through this experience. But the therapist was able to do that in a different way. Um, by yeah, just being able to hold that space. Yeah.
Okay, so talking with a professional is someone who's able to hold that space and kind of see things from a slightly different perspective, who's
Mhm.
not embedded in everything that's going on in your life already and is able to
Yeah.
take a step back. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Grace, what about you? What were you going through that led you to go get therapy?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Actually, it's a great segue from Angie, just because as I mentioned in your bio read, I was highly, highly skeptical. My husband has been in therapy and his family has been in therapy, so he was kind of used to that kind of language or even the idea of speaking with a therapist. And when on this onset of him suggesting that we should see a therapist, I was vehemently against it. I think I had like a visceral reaction and said, kind of opposite of what Angie had said. And I said, well, I have a bunch of good friends and I'm very close, with certain family members. And it was very easy and fluid for me to speak to them. So, how can a third party possibly understand or help and acknowledge what I'm going through? Um, at the time, my husband and I moved from New York back into my childhood house in Los Angeles. I just had found out we were pregnant. I was living with my parents, who we had just found out had both different illnesses. So my husband approached us and said, this would, probably be a good outlet for you to speak with someone and for us to just have better tools to kind of understand what you're going through and what we're going through eventually and what our family will grow into. So that was kind of the journey of how I started in therapy.
My goodness, there was so much going on. You were moving across the country. You were pregnant, and then your parents were also ill. And I'm sure there were lots of other transitions that were happening at that time too. So there's just a lot of things happening at once. And that
Yeah.
kind of led you to think maybe we should see a therapist. And so was that sort of like the tipping point for you? Because you said at the beginning that you were a little skeptical. It's like, why do I want to go talk to a stranger about therapy?
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a tipping point, and, I distinctly actually, we just recalled this memory with our therapist, this week, but we distinctly remember sitting in front of her, and I just went on and on and on that first session, and she was, at the end, question, like, "Are you sure you haven't been in therapy before?" And, it just felt so comfortable and at ease, shockingly, I thought that it would be very, very difficult, actually, for me to just be raw and honest with someone whom I just had met. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, what's it like to kind of open up your entire heart to someone that you just met, because that can also be a little scary. All
Hmm.
right, Jonathan, tell us, what were you going through that made you decide, I think I want to go get therapy?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I had, like in your bio, like the bio that you said, a lot of experiences with therapy over the past like 8 years. So I actually probably started and restarted multiple times. And so it all sort of blends together for me at this point. But in the very beginning, I want to say it was in college. And I think by that point, I was sort of struggling with self-esteem issues and sort of a lack of meaning in life. I think I was in a major for college that I didn't really enjoy at all. And I just felt like mm, I just wanted to talk to somebody. I didn't know who I could talk to, and I had heard that our university had free counseling. So I just figured I'd try it out, and that's sort of how it started. And I guess since then, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and times where I felt like, things were great. Times where I felt like it would be helpful to talk to somebody. And so, yeah, I've seen multiple therapists throughout my journey and tried antidepressants at some point, saw therapy with my mom at some point, and yeah, currently see a therapist now. So yeah, I mean, it all started with just, yeah, I guess, yeah, self-esteem and lack of meaning, but yeah, I've found a lot of benefits throughout my life for a lot of different reasons.
So your journey started in college where you were having some self-esteem issues and you decided to go see the counseling office that's on campus. Tell us, Jonathan, did you know about that? Was this something that you saw like a flyer for, or did someone say to you, it's like, hey, you should really think about going to the counseling office on campus?
That's a
Or
good
do you
question.
remember?
Yeah, I want to say um, during orientation, they might have put it sort of advertised it well that, this is available for people because it is common for people to struggle in college, right? So they wanted people to know that this resource is available to them. I don't think I maybe saw much flyers or like heard from anybody, but I sort of, I guess, kept it in the back of my mind and then utilized it within the first semester or two that I was there.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you remember that thing from orientation when they're bombarding you with information about what it's going to be like to be a college student. My goodness, wow.
I guess so.
Well, one of the things that, as I was thinking about this panel and kind of what we're going to talk about, I think in the Korean American community, there's a lot of negative stigma. There's a lot of kind of like hesitancy or negativity towards therapy and like seeing a mental health professional. Did y'all experience any of that negative stigma as you were getting ready to go into therapy or while you were getting therapeutic services? We'll start with Grace because I know you said at the beginning that you initially had some very strong reservations against getting therapy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, speaking to my family, like we're not a family to speak about our emotions or how we feel. I don't think as a child I've ever heard that expression from my parents. Like, how did that make you feel? Whereas in parenting these days, it's very forward in terms of expressing that with your child. And then furthermore, I'm Korean American, and that was even further removed. Like, you just are kind of a stoic person. Like, you just don't discuss things, and everything is swept under the rug. So that was it was very maybe a part of me that didn't even know that I had that stigma that prevented me from even being open to it. I remember having a discussion with my parents. My dad is a little bit more traditional, I would say. My mom is like a secret feminist, I would say. But when I said, hey, I would suggest you finding someone, a therapist to speak to, I think the reaction from my dad was just utter shock. Like, why would you even like suggest that? Like, there's nothing psychologically wrong with us was the kind of um, way that he had phrased it. So yeah, there's definitely some stigma involved.
And a lot of that stigma comes from the messages that we hear growing up from typically our family and parents who are like, kind of like, why are we doing this? And even mentioning it brings that up. Out of curiosity, you said that you had children, is that correct?
Yes, I have two girls.
You have two girls. How old are they by any chance?
So I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old that
Okay.
completely act like teenagers.
Is, you growing up in your parents' household, therapy and mental health was not really talked about. Do you bring that into your family?
Oh, absolutely. They know who our therapist is. They've met her. We speak very openly about the fact that she helps us communicate better, not only between, Appa and, dad and me, but mostly understands like how we want to set a foundation as a family in our communication and also trickle on that communication with them. So they're full on understanding what therapy is.
Gotcha. Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Angie, what about you? Did you experience any sort of negative stigmas as you were kind of navigating therapy? And then, if you would also touch upon, you're also a mental health professional too. So did you kind of run into things with that?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of parallels with what Grace was actually sharing. But as I was thinking about this, I was like, have I experienced any negative stigmas myself being in therapy? And thinking about that, I don't think I experienced negative stigma from others. But I also don't think I gave space for that because when I first started therapy in college, like early, like or late teens, I didn't tell anyone. So nobody really knew I was in therapy. And I think in my own way, I felt like I was trying to maybe protect myself because I was afraid of being stigmatized because of what I heard growing up. And yes, being in like a Korean American household, even at church, we had known people that had been in therapy, but the examples that we've seen or what we were told about was, okay, this kid is in therapy or this person is in therapy because there is something going really wrong in their life. And so I felt like, oh no, if I'm telling people that I'm in therapy, it could be seen in a certain way. And even on media, back then, it's like people are in therapy because they're going through something extreme. But as I got older, as I went to like counseling school myself and just kind of like processing and uncovering my own things, I realized that, therapy, sometimes you're there because you are really going through some major things in life. But for me, for my family, when we started, it was to be prepared for when something happens or if something big happens later on in life. Who knows what life will turn out to be, but we wanted to equip ourselves with tools and resources so we're able to manage the things that come up. And so currently, it's something that me and my family were very open about and very passionate about. And I mentioned that we ended family therapy last year, and my daughter was so sad about it. And even recently, whenever she goes through anything, she's like, I want to go back to therapy. She's like, I'm having something happen with my friends. I need someone to talk to. I want to go back to, my therapist. And I think there is something very healing about that for me. Just even though it was something that I grew up kind of thinking negatively about, I feel like we've created this perspective for my daughter, and Harper is just so open to telling her friends and just about anybody who asks about therapy, just how helpful it was for her, like what she's been doing, what works for her, what doesn't work for her. And I think I'm in a place now where I feel grateful that we as a family have been able to kind of break and destigmatize that within my family, my immediate family. Um, and hopefully, we can help with destigmatizing for other people we come across in just various settings.
And how old are your daughters again?
So Harper is 8 sometimes she does not seem like I feel like she's a teenager too. So Grace, I understand there's a lot of talk back these days. And then my youngest is 1. She turns 2 next week.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. I'm just trying to imagine an 8-year-old saying, we need to go back to family therapy. Like I'm trying to imagine that in my head right now.
She's very, very smart and yeah, very vocal.
Oh my goodness. I thought it was really interesting that you said that you didn't necessarily get negative comments or no one like said anything to you in terms of getting therapy, but the stigma kind of was there because you didn't talk about it. It's almost like it was sort of a
Mhm.
closely guarded secret, like saying that, oh, I'm going to a meeting or I'm meeting up with a friend or something.
Yeah. So nobody really knew. And I was in therapy for about maybe like 5 to 6 months. But yeah, it was something that I think close friends know now, but back then I wasn't comfortable with sharing it. So I feel like that stigma and shame was manifesting in a very like silent, private sort of way.
You're like within yourself.
Hmm.
Okay. Jonathan, in your, experience in navigating therapy, did you run into any sort of negative stigmas for it? Did anyone say anything, or did you feel uncomfortable with it?
So I would say my story started off similarly to Angie's. I think when I had heard about therapy, I thought it was for people going through really very significant issues, and I couldn't see myself, I guess, in that environment. And I guess as I, grew into college and I just was having a little bit of mental like difficulties and whatnot, I just realized like it doesn't hurt to try, I guess. And so I just decided to just try it out, and then I saw some benefits from it for sure. Uh, it's sort of a long story, but I started off only having 4 sessions because they only offered 4 sessions in college, and then later I went back and got some more. I don't even know if I was supposed to, but they let me. And then I experienced a lot of good results from that. And from there, I realized that I wanted other people to know how beneficial therapy can be. And so I started sharing with people. And I think, yeah, I wasn't really scared to share about it because I knew like how beneficial it could be. But I didn't really get any like comments from anybody either. But I noticed that people like reacted like sort of like strongly when they heard that I was going to therapy at first, because I think they had a similar idea that, oh, like therapy, like wow, it's this like really like significant thing for people for going through like a lot, right? But yeah, I guess I don't know. Actually, as time went on, I just kept talking about it. Like I'm pretty open about it, even to people I had recently met. I think there is some nuance to how much to share and with whom and whatnot. But I think recently I've been experiencing a lot more openness, and um, really appreciation for, I guess, speaking vocally about the benefits of therapy and my experiences with it. So yeah.
Yeah, certainly the times are changing and people are a lot more open and they're speaking more openly about their experiences in getting therapy. Um, Jonathan, I want to come back to something that you had said earlier. I think earlier on you said that you had gotten therapy with your mom. Is that correct?
That is right. Yeah.
What's it like to go to therapy with a parent, and how did you convince her to do that?
Um, I didn't expect her to say yes, honestly, and so I was really grateful and thankful that yeah, she did, and we were able to go through therapy together. Um, she is more open-minded for sure, which I think helps with that. She's not like this very conservative, traditional like Asian parent, I guess. Um, but I did have sort of I sort of exposed her to the idea of therapy through my own experiences. I guess for like multiple years. I saw a therapist with my mom like just last year, and so I had already been telling her about my experiences with therapy, and I had been involved with MSG, and she saw how passionate I was about mental health and the benefits of it. And I think those that probably planted some seeds in her being more open to it. And so, yeah, I mean, it was really helpful, really very thankful for the experience. We were just going through like conflicts that it didn't feel like we could resolve on our own. And so having a professional like help mediate really gave us, a better space to really understand each other and then see sort of how we could come to a better resolution and have the tools to navigate conflicts better in the future too. So yeah, it was really
So,
great.
so being open and talking about therapy throughout your entire journey, in a sense, planted these little seeds with your mom and probably a lot of people around you until you got to the point like, hey, I think we need to go to therapy together for this. And she was a little bit more open to that. Is that kind of how the story went?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Angie, I know you were talking earlier about why you went to therapy. It was about identity development as a Korean American. And, help us understand, like, how does therapy help with identity development? I thought therapy was just for people who are really sick and they get to feel better there.
Um, I think there's a lot to it. It feels like such a loaded question. And I think my identity, it has been and is evolving at different points and stages in my life. And I think it's going to continue to do so. And I think with therapy, I just really learned to, I guess, embrace the different stages. So kind of going back to my college years, like teenage years when I was younger, I thought that my identity was something that had to be like compartmentalized, like everything is separate and I need to just juggle this. So being Korean, being an American, being a daughter, a student, a friend. But one thing that I learned while in therapy was that all these different parts of who I am can coexist and that I could be all those different parts at the same time, if that makes sense. And it wasn't something that I had to choose between one or the other. And so that was actually a really big thing that I learned early on in my like early 20s, I think. And it's something that I've been kind of going through at different points in my life because now I'm a mother and a wife. And you know, I think coming to terms with those identities, there was a lot that came with that too. And some of it had to just do with a lot of my upbringing as well and just my environment. Um, but I think through therapy, I just realized that there were parts of myself that I didn't really realize that I was even ashamed of, or parts that I felt embarrassed about, especially in my teens, like my Korean American identity. Um, Sometimes I felt so embarrassed to be Korean. And then there are times where I was like, oh, am I really American? Or, juggling and balancing that as a teen. And so that was something that I kind of worked through when I was younger, by just kind of diving deeper into it and just kind of even understanding what my triggers are, like what triggers those thoughts, being able to process the impact that, my environment and my upbringing had to do with the feelings and the thoughts that I had about myself. And I think the journey of, self-awareness with a professional in those early days of therapy really helped me to be more comfortable with who I am. And yeah, I just realized that I really need a space to process and work through my own pains in my life with someone that's, again, able to be objective, see from a different lens than what I'm used to seeing to help me really navigate my thoughts and my choices.
There's so much going on in that. You're right. It's very complex. It's not just about being Korean or American or Korean American. It was other identities, like you said, being a daughter, being a friend, going to now being a mother and a wife. It's just all of these different things. And there are very few places to really sit down and look at all these aspects of who you are.
Hmm.
There's one question that's kind of tickling the back of my brain right now. And, therapy sounds great. It's like, okay, these are issues that, I've gone through similar issues, and I think people in our audience have as well. It's like, okay, therapy sounds like a place I could go to get help with this.
Hmm.
But how much is it? Isn't therapy super duper expensive? So,
Yes. Yes. It's like, yes
Angie, do you want
and
to take the first
no.
stab at this and tell us
Yes,
about
I think
like,
I can take the first stab at it from my experience here in Oregon. So I live in Oregon and I've seen therapy as, as low as, 125, but I've seen it upwards of like 250 and more an hour as well. And I think typically around here, it's around 150, which is average, I think, for therapy. Um, and for my family in particular, we actually have insurance. And because my family is in a certain income bracket, we actually have zero copay for our weekly therapy sessions. So it's free for now. But I also have friends who are in a higher income bracket that have insurance also. And for them, I've seen them pay as much as $20 to $25, sometimes more for copay. Um, but then again, I also have friends that have no insurance at all, and they have to pay out of pocket at times. And I think 150 can be very steep, especially if you're paying weekly, even if it's bi-weekly. You may not be able to work that into your budget. So I completely understand just how the fees can be a barrier, but it's not impossible to be in therapy, because I know there are a lot of therapists that offer something called a sliding scale. Um, and for those of you that may not be familiar with the sliding scale, it's when the fees can change depending on what you're able to pay. And that can be based on your income level, for example. So if you meet the requirements of being offered a sliding scale, you may pay maybe only, 20% or 25% of a fee opposed to the full fee. And so again, not all therapists offer this, but there are some that do offer a certain number of sliding scales per year or so. It really just depends. So I think that therapy is accessible for various income levels, but you have to do research. And I think that's what's kind of tricky. And again, with therapy, it's not a one size fits all. So I think it could be that, your friend might say this therapist is great, but it might not be the best fit for you. So I think really shopping around for a therapist like you would with a doctor is really important. I think that's really good. And yeah, I think that's also one thing that I appreciate about what MSG offers, because we do have, or MSG has a directory. And I think the directory lets you know of, therapists that are culturally and ethnically aligned. And it does let you know if they take insurance or sliding scale. So I feel like MSG's directory is a great place to start. But there are so many different avenues of looking for therapies or therapists and seeing what they offer.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha. So there's lots of things out there. The sliding scale, you might see it on a directory. Is that something that you could, as a client, come in and just ask about to your therapist? Like, hey, do you offer a sliding scale?
yes, I think you can. The worst they're gonna say is no, we don't. And then you move on and maybe ask somebody else. But I think it's always important to ask.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to use the MSG directory as a segue and talk to the creator of the MSG directory. Jonathan, tell us about your experiences navigating the cost of therapy. I know you started in college and you said there it was free or low cost.
Yeah, so I think it started off free for me, and I think later on it became maybe $10 per session. So I think universities are aware that college students aren't making much money, so they want to keep it affordable for people. And so that could be an option if you're a college student or if you know a college student. They could probably look to their university for affordable options, hopefully. But besides that, I am thankful that I do have insurance through my work as well. And generally, I pay around $25 per session, which can last around 50 minutes. There were times where I didn't have insurance too, and I paid more. But I think, like Angie said, there are a lot of options available as long as you do research and find something, that works for you. Whether that's with your insurance or through sliding scale or I actually, now that I think about it, I think there are services that um, like life care. I don't know if they still operate anymore, but there are very affordable options even without insurance or a sliding scale. So they are out there. I think you just have to look for it through things like MSG's directory or whatever other methods like Psychology Today.
Right. So even going to different places like college, there might be different organizations in the area. Insurance helps a lot. Grace, would you say that that was kind of how you and your family navigated therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw the initial cost of therapy, and quite frankly, it was a sticker shock. We kind of, it took my breath away personally. And I think that I warmed up to the idea merely because our insurance covered it. Few sessions in, our personal experience is that that actually changed, and insurance was no longer covering our services with our therapist. And yeah, my husband and I had to really sit down and make sense of like how can we fit this in. And for us it was that critical and that important to just fit it in our budget. When looking through the budget, I mean, it's horrible, but like the likeliness of me comparing it to like a gym membership, let's say, right? The cost of it, apples to apples, we're like, it's so, the idea of paying a gym membership for a really nice gym is, yeah, no brainer, right? But then why would you pay something that's mentally fit for or good for your condition, or like your mental state rather, and why would you not even consider paying remotely the same amount as a gym membership? And for us it really, in our work with therapy, it made us realize, gosh, like it's way more important than the physical well-being and being in a gym membership. So for us now, when we sit down and do our budgeting, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like we just plug it in, and it's as if it's a part of like any major expense in our household. We fit it in, and in the back end, we pull it out from our health savings account, which is also a nice kind of tool that you can use if you have that with your employer.
Gotcha. So you do a lot of budgeting. It's such an important aspect of your life and your daily functioning at home that you have to build that in. I love your analogy about like a gym membership as well as getting therapy. It's like it's that level of importance, and kind of made me think back to something that Angie had mentioned about how going to therapy can help prevent problems from coming about. Is that sort of some of the mindset that you go in with as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think when I first started, it was a major issue or things that we were specifically working on. Now we see it just as building tools in your toolbox. I'm a huge believer that that you're going to go through many different seasons. The most difficult season that you think that you're going through right now um, will probably like years later sound a little silly and not as difficult. So um, as Angie mentioned, there's so many things, like you're an evolving person and an evolving individual. If you are married, your partnership is evolving. If you have kids, I mean, they are evolving at a light speed. So for you to have these kind of foundational tools for you to work on and evolve alongside them with these tools, and those tools will evolve as well, right? So yeah, I think I'm a huge believer that it's, a lot of it is preventative, a lot of it is lived on a daily basis, the things that you learn. um yeah, it's something that I am highly, I honestly don't know what I would do if I didn't have therapy.
I want to go into that a little bit deeper.
Mhm.
So it's worth it. You got to put in the money for it. There's different ways to kind of mitigate the costs, but for you and your family, this is so worth it, both to intervene with problems that are happening and to prevent future problems from coming about. But I mean, is therapy that great? Like, how has it changed the way that you see things and the way that you see your world and your life? Is it that
Yeah.
great?
Yes, it is that great. Short answer. In reflection of how just kind of my perspectives on things, um, childhood leading into my teen years, leading into my young adult years, personally, I saw a lot of things in very black and white. It was very much easy for me to categorize things in the black and white. And for me, gray just simply did not exist.
Mm.
Um, period. And for me and my husband, it really prevented us from kind of connecting in a deeper level because I didn't accept the grays. But after therapy, not only did it shed light on the grays, but it made me feel so different about the fact that there are so many shades of gray and it's okay to exist in that gray. It's okay that there's things are a little bit blurred, or maybe, some of your identity might be, there are things that you'll take on with you, but it's okay for you to evolve that in the grays, so to speak. I don't know if I'm being too metaphorical or not.
No,
But
no.
yeah, I think my perspective has completely shifted. Um, and so, I mean, Jonathan, you're mentioning you're not shy about speaking to therapy about different people. I mean, I don't think there is a conversation that I leave without speaking with someone and somehow landing with, you should definitely like be open to therapy. Like it's like a complete stranger, and it'll end with that. Just because it's really, really just changed my perspective on how I see things.
Wow, I love this idea. It's like it's not just black and white, this or that, but there's all this in between stuff.
Hmm.
And it just made me think about emotions themselves. It's not, you're not just angry or not angry. There's, you're simmering in anger, you're kind of boiling, or you're kind of blowing up, or you're just absolutely about to explode. There's so many different kinds of anger out there, and appreciating and exploring all of those things are so important. And what a great place to do that, but in
Yeah.
therapy. Mm. Jonathan, you had mentioned that you've seen different therapists throughout the past about 8 years or so. How do you know if you found the right one? Like, how do you know you found a good therapist?
Yeah, I don't know if there's ever gonna be a perfect therapist for you or the perfect match for you. But I think through a lot of experience, it's gonna take some trial and error, I think. Um, I think you can start off looking at, the MSG directory or other places to see sort of an idea of like, oh, am I gonna feel comfortable sharing things with this person? Am I going to, see myself having open dialogue with them? And I guess after you try it out, or from my experience, I could tell, if I was a little comfortable or maybe not as comfortable with certain people. Not because it's just their dynamic and, what I was looking for, right? Not based on any sort of lacking. But yeah, I guess just through experience and trial and error, I think I found out, yeah, I mean, this is sort of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who, you know, asks a lot of questions to help me understand really what the issue is, and then, helps me think through the sort of the answer or the response to that, right? And so I think that's just, what I learned over seeing multiple people. And I think for everybody, that's going to be a different journey. And I think I would also encourage everybody to, not just get stuck in the area of, oh man, where is the best therapist for me? I would encourage somebody to try it out, and then, yeah, just see how it goes, and then get some benefit out of that, hopefully. And then if it's not working out, then maybe try some other areas too.
Gotcha. So it's not just about, is this a good therapist or a bad therapist, but does this person help me to talk about all these things that are going on in my life and such? Um, I want to throw this question to Angie as well. It's like, how would you say you went about like finding the right therapist?
I think very similar to what Jonathan said. I think it takes a lot of research, and it's something that you don't always know right away. So that's why it is helpful to see different kinds of therapists to see who's right for you, who you even connect with, that you feel comfortable with, and that can take I think a few sessions even to even know if you feel like this person aligns with you. And yeah, getting that research started to kind of identify and narrow down on, what you're looking for in a therapist. And as you meet different therapists, I think like, okay, what do you appreciate about this person? What do you feel like, I don't know about this? But also just knowing that you aren't going to find the perfect fit. But I think for me personally, it was really helpful for me to meet with a therapist that was aligned with just my identity, as a Korean American, so culturally and ethnically, even spiritually aligned. And for me, it was important that it was a female therapist too. So those are some of the things that I knew I wanted. And so as I was searching, when I found my therapist, I was like, it aligns, but I wonder if this is going to work out. But the more sessions we had, I was like, oh, we're able to have really difficult conversations too. And I really appreciated the insight she gave. And I think also because we were culturally and ethnically aligned, there were a lot of things that I just didn't have to explain to her. She just already knew because she was a Korean American herself. And she has been in the church scene. And so I think because of that too, just spiritually, ethnically, culturally, there are so many things that I was just able to talk about without having to explain. And she just knew what I was talking about and she was able to just understand. And that helped me to actually open up more too.
So having all of these different cultural things align kind of made it a little bit easier for you to open up and talk with someone because they've had some parallel or similar experiences to you. You mentioned that you had family therapy. How do you find the right fit in family therapy? Because you might like the therapist, but
Mhm.
somebody else might not.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so our family therapist, we didn't shop around too much. But it was actually one of the first therapists that we met, but we just all connected so well from the get-go. And I think it was also clear to us that we wanted to work with her because, first of all, our daughter felt connected with her too. And I think that was really important to us because we wanted to make sure that our daughter was able to feel comfortable sharing just things that she might not be able to share with us. And so after a few sessions, I think that helped us in solidifying her as a family therapist because I think making sure our child was comfortable in that space was really important to us. And of course, with us, she aligned with us too. Um, but I think we just got really lucky, but that's not always the case. So it can take a few different you know, therapists a few different tries before you find the right one. Um, but yeah.
That's pretty amazing for someone to be able to relate to a 7 or 8 year old as well as the adults in the room and to make everyone feel comfortable talking in there. And you talked about like, yeah, we kind of struck it lucky because the first person that we went to just seemed to work for everybody. Uh, Grace, would you say that when you were looking for a therapist, there was a lot of shopping around for you as well?
You know what? Actually, it was a stroke of luck as well. For us,
Oh, really?
it was, I mean, we did quite a lot of research, but I do want to emphasize too, I think that it's very important that the therapist is a good fit, but it's also equally important what you bring to the table, right? It if you are going to actually take away something from this, like you have to come in with a mindset that you're going to be vulnerable and you're going to be authentic to that experience. Because no matter how perfectly fit this therapist is, if you're not going to be real and authentic and bring to the conversation what you're actually experiencing or what you need from it, like there is no other therapist that could fit perfectly here. So it's really what you bring to the table as well, is what I feel.
So the theme I'm hearing is there's no such thing as a perfect therapist, but there are different things that the therapist can do to help you feel more comfortable opening up and talking and helping you to work through these different things. Okay, so some shopping around is okay, as well as you might also get lucky too and find someone who just really helps you to open up during that time. Well, if you can believe it, we're already at our last minutes of the panel. And I told our panelists that I had one big last question that I wanted to ask them, and they had prepared this last question. So, this last and final question is, if there are those listening right now and they are hesitant or reluctant about going to therapy, what is one thing, and you know what? I'll even be generous. You can even say two things if you want. What is one or two things that you'd like to share with someone who's, I'm not so sure about therapy?
I guess I could go ahead and share. I did think about this too. And I think what I would say is that it can be scary sometimes to think about therapy and the unpacking and the processing that can come from it. It can be very painful, digging into our experiences. But I think as the painful moments come, there is also hope for healing and restoration and reconciliation for that kid in us, for that teenager in us, even the adult in us. And I think when I was first starting out therapy, one of the things that I was told was therapy, it's almost like driving a car. So you're in control of that car. But the therapist is like the navigation or just the passenger side friend, just kind of letting us know what they observe and see. But ultimately, we're in control of how we want to proceed, what we want to share, where we want to go with it, what choices we want to make. And I think whether we want to make a turn, go straight, or stop, the therapist will be there to kind of point things out. Like, I see a pothole, or I see that speed bump ahead, or look at those trees. But through that journey until you're ready to turn the navigation off or stop, the therapist will journey with you as you work towards healing. And so you're not alone. And I hope there's some encouragement in knowing that.
Sounds like a great book title, like Road Trip to Healing or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Grace or Jonathan, what would you say to someone's like, yeah, I'm not really sure about therapy?
Yeah. I can go next. Gosh, it's made a world of a difference for me, especially caregiving to both ailing parents, having two young girls. A lot of what I pride myself up to the point of that role was that I had a lot of control. And you can imagine with two ailing parents, two girls, it's zero control. And you will face a lot of things in life just where you have a lack of control. And I think that therapy really helps me understand that it's okay to not have control and how to kind of cope in ways that are a little bit more productive for myself. Or even receiving, things will get messy and family members will have say hurtful things, or there will be moments where you go through things that you have zero control over, but it's in how you receive it. And I think therapy has helped me kind of build this toolbox of understanding how I'm going to receive it and how I'm going to move forward with it. So it's really built up a lot of confidence in how I can navigate um, just a variety of issues.
You've got this great tool set, this set of skills that you have to handle things that, I like the little examples you were giving, like if someone in your family says something to you that gets under your skin. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I've experienced that a lot. I experience that every time I go home and see my parents. They'll say something that just gets under my skin, and going through therapy can help bring you some tools and skills to help you kind of handle that situation. It's like, okay, why is this getting under my skin, and such. All right, Jonathan, what would you say to someone who is not so sure about going to seek therapy?
So I would want to, ask what their hesitancy is with first. But assuming, it's I don't know. I think what I would say is, okay, mm, do you want to be able to handle stressful moments better? Do you want to be able to not be as stressed in life in general? Do you want to be able to process your sadness or loneliness or any difficult times just more healthily and with the help of somebody who's professionally trained and has experience helping people through these moments and so that they can live more like happy and fulfilling lives? Do you want all these tools to even be stronger in your spiritual life, if that's relevant to you? Um, yeah, I think there's just so many benefits to it, and I think everybody can benefit from it, and so I think it can't hurt to try, really. I think it could bring a ton of benefit, and I think, yeah, in my life and in so many people's lives, it's been so worth it.
I think you brought up a really great point. It's like when you're stressed, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but as an educator, the end of the school year is so stressful. Sometimes I don't even know what day it is or where I'm supposed to be at any given moment. And that's just because the stress levels are so high, I forget. And so how typical is it that when you're stressed, you might not also be as patient? You might not be as thinking before something comes out of your mouth, and therapy can give you some of those tools to help you in those situations. All right. Well, I hope you all have enjoyed listening to our panelists and kind of them giving you a bird's eye view of what it's like to get therapy. For the next 20 to 25 minutes, we're going to have some breakout rooms where each of the panelists is going to be in a separate room, and you get to ask all those questions you've been afraid to ask, or maybe you ask a whole bunch of people too within that space so that they can give you their perspectives on what it's like to get therapy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a fruitful discussion session. Yeah, it is really nice seeing everyone's faces, actually. Um, on behalf of MSG, I would like to extend a heartfelt gratitude to our incredible panelists today, Jonathan, Angie, and Grace. And also Dr. Sim for beautifully moderating as always. So thank you everyone for your insights and sharing transparent and candid stories with us today. And thank you everyone for being here today and being an integral part of today's event. So we would like to say thank you. And going back, as a personal story, at my hometown church in Korea, the pastor, the 목사님, concludes Sunday service with the same blessing each week, which is, may the Sunday service mark as the beginning of walking alongside with the Lord. So it's the beginning, not the end. So I believe that we as a MSG holds a similar sentiment, which is our hope is that this events like this can mark the start of many additional steps that you'll take and sparking the dialogue around mental health in the Korean American community. So here are 4 resources that we would like to share with you, and I will drop some links in the chat box as well. So first is our website, as Jonathan and shared earlier, and also Angie and Grace shared. We have an online directory for Korean American mental health professionals across the nation. So you can select the state and browse Korean American mental health professionals nearby the city that you're living in. And second, we have reports. In MSG, we have dedicated members, including grad students and faculty members, who analyze data on mental health in the Korean American community to provide improved materials and resources. And third, we provide bilingual blog posts. So whether you're seeking personal journeys or tips on finding the right therapist, which was shared today, or understanding the differences between counselors and psychologists, our blogs offer a wealth of resources.
And fourth, we have an incredible podcast hosted by Dr. Sam. As you can hear from him, he is incredible. Like his voice is so soothing to hear as well, along with Sharon, who is our former executive director. They delve into the latest mental health research relevant to Korean Americans, offering insights that can spur tangible changes for therapists and clients. So the podcast caters to not only professionals, but also lay people, and even to those who are simply curious about research. And moving on, please join us for our Heart to Healing Fireside Chat that will be held in May. So please mark a note, and which is the Bridging Generations. We are excited to share that we will be inviting Dr. Josephine Kim, the founder of Mustard Seed Generation and a faculty member at Harvard Graduate School of Education. In celebration of API Heritage Month and Mental Health Awareness Month, and also Korean Family Month in May, Dr. Jo will be sharing insights into parenting as a Korean American and fostering mental health awareness across generations. So please mark your calendars. You can scan the QR code right now with your phone and register to join us next month as well. And we are adding even more excitement with another fireside chat titled Bridging Hearts. We are thrilled to share that we'll be inviting 3 incredible Korean American adoptees to share their unique journeys and experiences. Join us for an evening of heartfelt stories and meaningful connections as we explore the diverse paths of identity. So save the date and join us for this event. And last but not least, we would like to talk about giving. Your generosity can make a real difference. By donating to our cause, you'll help us continue providing vital resources like today and support to Korean American individuals. Every contribution, no matter the size, helps us break down barriers and ensure that mental health wellness is within reach for all. So in the month of April, we are aiming to raise $2,000, 2K. Every dollar donated will be directly impact our efforts to provide essential mental health resources, support networks, and outreach programs tailored to the needs of Korean Americans. So please join us in our mission to spread healing and hope. And we would like to encourage you to donate today and be a part of the community. So thank you for your generosity. And once more, we extend our immense gratitude to all who joined us this Sunday evening. We hope the rest of your evening will be as rejuvenating as our time together. So I'd like to say thank you once again. Good night, everyone.